This is the Veterinary Project Podcast, episode 29.
Welcome to the show created by vets featuring absolutely no pets. This is the Veterinary Project Podcast, hosted by Dr. Michael Bugg and Dr. Jonathan Light. Our resident veterinarians have swapped out their stethoscopes in favor of microphones to bring you the Veterinary Project Podcast, a show focused on real conversations, aimed to connect this amazing profession full of remarkable people. Through the sharing of collective stories and wisdom, and connecting over the many unique challenges we face, we invite you to join our community of veterinary professionals leading intentional lives. And now, here are the hosts of the Veterinary Project Podcast, Dr. Michael Bugg and Dr. Jonathan Light.
Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Veterinary Project Podcast. As always, Dr. Michael Bugg and Dr. Jonathan Light.
Woo-woo!
Johnny, you sent me a text there a week or two ago. I can't remember when it was, but a photo. You were out in British Columbia, and the photo was a big trailer full of all sorts of veterinary supplies, and it looked like kennels and blood machines and etc. So fill us in. There must be some action going on.
Oh, this is a good one. I'll keep it brief. In the fall last year, there was a clinic that unfortunately had to close in Alberta, and they went to auction. And I always regretted not bidding on some of those items. So my wife and I, we were out about a month and a half ago. I said, I've got to find another one of these clinics. You never hope for bad things, but you hope, in the essence of somebody moving on, there may be some equipment as opposed to having to buy everything brand new, spending the hundreds of hours for all the little pieces that go into that clinic. Well, 2 days later, literally, we got an email about a clinic that was closing down in BC. So over the next month and a half, we went through, bargaining and just understanding virtually with COVID what was in the practice, and ended up taking a nice 9-hour drive one day and going to pick it up, and a great experience with the owner and her husband. They helped me out load up and came back, and just got myself a 2-person practice, probably about a quarter of the things that you need, but all the little pieces. So it was fantastic. And they're now sitting nice and comfortably in the basement of the practice.
Okay, I was going to ask. So at least they're at the practice. They're not in the living room or anything like that.
They are not. No, we've got quite a big space, so there's places to be. And now I've got to actually move some kennels that we have from a separate place out of storage. So things are coming together. That's for sure. It's happening quick, and I'll have some posts right away actually on Instagram. We just met with our designer this morning in some final touches, and it's coming. It's coming real quick.
Nice. So for me, because I don't know, put a timeline on that. Like, when are you projected that this clinic will be open?
Oh, you know what? It's amazing. We originally projected March, but then you have to come into development permits. So will the city actually allow you to be where you want to be if it's not, because this is a new build? Then you need a building permit based on your drawings and designs being finalized. We've got a little bit of a hold up with HVAC, so mechanical and electrical drawings that are pretty specific for what the city needs. And then from then you have a 3 to 4 month build out period, depending on how complicated your project is. So right now we're looking at mid-June 2021 for opening. And there's 1,000 steps that come before that. And I would say we're probably at step 200 right now.
Okay. Only 800 to go though. So you're making
That's right.
progress.
Yep.
Okay.
Baby steps every day.
Nice. Okay. Well, we got another great guest. We really connected on personal development piece. After the camera turned off, we kind of lost track of time. We probably chatted for another extra hour beyond that. So really great conversation. Before I dive into the bio and the intro, I'll throw it back to you, Johnny, for today's quick tip.
Our quick tip is a quick one. In having to get some insurance and such set up, I went onto our CVMA site, which is the Canadian Veterinary Medical Association in Alberta. You have to be a member of that organization. In the States, the AVMA equivalent. And I'm going down the list of discounts and ability to help, whether you're a veterinarian or a veterinary practice owner. And I went, how come I've never taken advantage of these? There are a number of very valuable resources on that site. I admittedly have not used them. So my recommendation for everybody today, go on to either it's your state or your National Veterinary Medical Association site. Take advantage. It's there for you.
Nice. Okay. I'm curious, give me a couple of them,
I'll give you a perfect example. Plums, an amazing resource for any practicing veterinarian on an app. 30% discount. That means I've been paying 30% more every single month. Again, simple, but that's an expensive app. So for insurance, I'm going to get 10% at least with the insurer that I'm looking to use. Car discounts, hotels, you name it is on that site. And I've never really paid attention.
Well, I didn't know about this either. Now I have to go look too. Okay. Thanks for the tip.
There we go. That's why we do this, Mike. That's why this is the Veterinary Project.
I guess so. I'm going to save so much money now. It's going to be amazing. Okay. Our guest today is Dr. Jacqui Horner. Dr. Horner is a native of Clarksdale, Mississippi, but has called Georgia home since 2001. She received her bachelor's degree in biology in 2010 and a doctorate of veterinary medicine in 2015 from the University of Georgia. She currently practices small animal relief work part-time while building the mission and vision of Resiliency Rising. And we do dive into that near the end. Resiliency Rising, kind of born out of a place of radical compassion with Jacqui. And so this is kind of a business venture that she's diving into to really help, lead the conversations in veterinary medicine. She's extraordinarily passionate about mental health, well-being, mindfulness, leadership, and personal development. She and her fiance have 2 fur children of her own, Chance, a golden retriever, and Heidi, a German shepherd, who all live together in West Midtown, Atlanta. Her favorite hobbies include running, lifting, hiking, cooking, reading self-development books, and travel. And a random fun fact she put in her bio, but it didn't come up in the conversation, is she's fully bilingual with Spanish as her second language. Yeah, I meant to ask her about that because I'm always so impressed at people that can speak multiple languages. Like, that is truly amazing. So this is an amazing conversation. I lost track, but there are a few mic drop moments as we get diving into this. It's a very real, very vulnerable conversation. We kind of go through Jacqui's journey through her years of being a veterinarian, and then what led to kind of, some struggles, as she resigned from her last role. And we really go deep into, honoring yourself and kind of taking charge of your life and leading that life that you want to live. So, I mean, this is one I'm going to be listening to this one potentially a couple times because there was so much going on. So without any further ado, I give you Dr. Jacqui Horner. All right, Jacqui, thanks so much for joining us. It's so great to have you on the podcast.
I'm really, really excited to be here, hanging out with you two. It's going to be good. Thanks for having me.
It's fun as we're keep building this out. We have multiple connections, right? Melanie Bowden, who was on our podcast, Tanasia Crocker. So as we're finally getting more involved in the community, the social media world, you came recommended from multiple angles. So we're really excited to dive in.
I'm so flattered. I have great friends.
Nice.
Okay. So maybe for our listeners, if they haven't heard of you, haven't seen any of your social media stuff, why don't you just give us a quick little rundown on kind of who you are and your journey, that brings us to this point?
Oh, okay. I'll try to be quick. So I am 32 years old. I grew up in southern Mississippi, and I've been living in Georgia since 2001. I've known that that traditional viewpoint on knowing you want to be a vet since you're a little kid. That's definitely the case for me. I've always loved science, math, all the things. I went to vet school at the University of Georgia, and I was there for a total of 9 years during my undergrad and my doctorate degree. And then I left school and found an amazing practice in Atlanta, in a very affluent area of Atlanta. And I was there for 5.5, almost 6 years. It's a great practice, super busy. When I left, they had 10 doctors and nearly 50 employees total. And, I remember in school not really having too many anxiety issues. Generally speaking, I felt in control. I think even with the stress of school, overall, I was doing pretty well. I know a lot of students struggle with balancing things, especially right now with so much going on in the world. pandemic and everything being online. But I would say the first 2 years of practice, I was so focused just on being a vet. I mean, my entire life was consumed with just the learning curve of realizing, oh, this is what school looks like. And this is what practice looks like. And I don't know how to treat infected anal glands. Like, no one told me this stuff, and I see it every week. So just figuring that kind of part of my life out. After the 2-year mark, I really started getting comfortable, kind of knowing my voice. I actually spent a lot of time in the service industry, getting through college and vet school. I used to wait tables, bartend for many years. So that gave me some really good people skills, if I do say so myself. I dealt with a lot of jerks in the service industry. So I know how to handle difficult people. So that was something of a strength that I discovered once I got into practice. I was always able to connect with people and have really dedicated clients, loyal clients. The downside of connecting with people is I ended up blurring the lines, as many of us do, between professional and kind of that emotional investment level. And suddenly I was way over communicating. So, I was seeing my patients, doing text messaging, phone calls, sometimes working on my day off, emailing, just really giving that 5-star service. And that felt good for a little while, because it's that positive feedback loop, positive reinforcement. People love to feel like they're the most important person and the most important client and patient. But after a period, that became kind of all consuming. So I realized that things were out of balance, and I didn't realize it in a conscious level. I realized it by, and I actually don't think I told you this story, but one of the things that happened to me was just physical manifestations of anxiety and depression, and chest tightness, not being able to think clearly, being super stressed out about going into work, kind of just white knuckling to get through the day, and worrying constantly about, what are my clients going to think? Did I disappoint that person? Oh, I didn't call them back on time. So a lot of these issues and thought patterns became more and more prominent in my daily life, that at one point, I actually had a full-on anxiety attack at work, where I blacked out, I hyperventilated, I couldn't, literally could not, you could be speaking to me and it sounded like wah, 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 wah. Like I couldn't actually understand what someone was saying to me, even though I was looking at them. So my body physically started shutting down on me. And that was December 2019. That wasn't that terribly long ago. But I knew that these things were issues for myself and for other people before that breakdown happened. And that's when I started dabbling in self-development and learning a little bit more about mental health and the importance of well-being. And that's kind of where Resilience Rising was born, was, out of a labor of love and learning about myself.
Wow, that's fascinating. And we're definitely going to come back around to that. I want to kind of jump back and try and get a sense, like in the early years, like I totally understand, year 1, year 2, it kind of feels like you're drinking from a fire hose, just learning how to be a vet, right? Like you said, right. All the stuff you just didn't learn in vet school or wasn't taught to you. And so you're a high performer, 5-star service. At what point, was there a point where like things start to be like, wait a minute, running at this speed, maybe isn't sustainable? Like, I don't know if I'm asking this question well, but like,
was there a point when I knew?
Yeah. And like you had mentioned, kind of year 3, 4, you're really comfortable with practice now and you're giving great service. Like at that point, and you obviously love medicine, love veterinary medicine, is everything just clicking, or do you know, hey, wait a minute, this might not be sustainable?
I don't think it ever occurred to me that it wasn't sustainable. I think that's part of the problem is that for us and caring and helping professions, our identity is so wrapped up in our work, and there is no separation. I mean, your entire life thus far has been built on becoming a doctor. You know nothing else. And then you arrive, because there never is arriving, but you arrive, you get your doctorate, you start practice, and there is still never an emphasis from anyone that your focus shouldn't be only on your work. So it's almost impossible for an individual to know that this is abnormal when you actually don't know what normal is. Like, what do they teach you in PATH? They teach you all the normal stuff, and then they teach you the abnormal. Well, if no one ever shows you what normal is, or what balance is, or what mental health is, what does that look like? How could you possibly know and recognize what abnormal is?
And I would also jump in and probably say that the vast majority of those that are teaching us don't know that either.
I would say so. And to answer your question, to be totally vulnerable and transparent, my sister is a now sober heroin addict, and going through what we went through together as a family and understanding what contributed to her addiction, I was able to recognize the red flags in my own behavior and my own thoughts because of what she went through. So when I was, saying effed up things to myself, like, I don't want to feel, or I just want to be numb, and I just want to take this Xanax and drink this alcohol, those are huge red flags. And if it, honestly, if it weren't for my sister, I probably wouldn't have recognized that so quickly, and I wouldn't have been able to ask for help and literally schedule myself an appointment with a psychiatrist the next week. So yeah, I agree with you, Jonathan. It's like we don't really have a ton of models, or we are now having more now, but I think when I was going through school, and I would venture to guess when you guys were going through school, like, you didn't really have a ton of models to show you.
No. Yeah, Jacqui, that piece on normal, abnormal, and using the pathology example, that's brilliant. Like, I've never heard it that way before.
Just thought of it while we were talking.
So on your journey, you said, like, kind of leaning on your experience with your sister, starting to recognize a few red flags in yourself. So it was you yourself that recognized them and then started to take some action on it? Yes.
I would say part one, because I've had 2 periods in my career where I've had breakdowns. And that first one, I was going through kind of alone. I think I was single at the time, or I don't think I was dating someone that was worth thinking about. I don't know, but I felt alone. And so I leaned on my experience with my sister. The second breakdown, the one I said that I was kind of physically not doing well, that my body told me, but also my current partner, my future husband, he has been the mirror to my face. He was the one that said, "Hey, Jacqui, you're being really negative, or you're so quick to snap at me. Why aren't you laughing at something that's honestly really funny?" Like, he would tell me these things and say that I'm like seeing the glass half empty. And I had a huge disagreement with that, because I was like, that's not who I am. I'm a very positive and bubbly and energetic person. And there's this huge cognitive dissonance between what he was saying and who I was saying that I was and who I believe myself to be. So that was the second set of signals, was my body telling me this isn't working anymore. And then my partner saying, you are not who he didn't say you're not who you say you are. He just was showing me that my lifestyle was creating a different version of myself that quite frankly wasn't pleasant to be around.
Mm-hmm. And that's a tough spot. And I've been in that situation also where you think you're behaving one way, right? You have this idea of who you are and probably like who you were as like the positive, happy person. That was me also. And then you kind of slip into this more negative, it's not even a mood anymore. It's now your new personality. And then, your loved ones bear the brunt of that to no fault of their own. And that's a tough place to be.
Yeah. Yeah. Cause then it adds a whole layer of conflict. Like if you're not open to that conversation or receiving that information, cause I certainly wasn't, that adds a whole nother layer of stress because now you're battling yourself and you're battling your partner. And it's like a two front. So yeah, it was tough, but it does make you change things quickly.
Or you could continue to ignore it and not believe it. So I think something that you said within the week, you then booked an appointment with a psychiatrist. I would love to understand that bit a little bit from your perspective. Sorry, Mike, for jumping in. Is how did you make that? Like, that's a pretty quick turnaround. And what was the actual steps that you went through, again, for some listeners that might be going through the same challenges right now?
Yeah, well, I mean, I can still remember exactly where I was sitting when I made that decision. I was sitting in my bathroom and I think I literally had like a Corona light in my hand in the bathroom and a Xanax in my other hand. And I think it just scared the shit out of me, to be honest with you. Like, to say to myself, I want to feel numb. I was like, oh my God, this is why Sarah used heroin, because she didn't want to feel. This is why so many veterinarians drink alcohol and veterinary staff members. This is why people commit suicide, because they just don't want to feel anymore. And I knew in that moment that if I allowed those thoughts to continue on and didn't address them, that I was going to become consumed. And I'm not ready to leave this planet. So I was like, if we start going down that road, if I don't interrupt that right fucking now, I'm not allowed to cuss on this podcast.
100%. I'm happy you did.
Okay.
We're going to have to send her a video of our pre-interview setup. We've had this, sorry, not the right time, but we've had this discussion already. You're free.
Okay. Yeah. So I was just like, we're going to stop this shit right now. And I think I called, I want to say I called my colleague first, or my mom. I don't remember. I called either my mom or my work mom, Jody, and said, hey, I need to go see a therapist. Just like get it out in the universe, because as soon as it's out there and someone else knows, you have someone to hold you accountable. Whereas if you keep that to yourself and you suffer quietly, no one is there to hold you accountable. And it is very easy to convince yourself out of things, especially when they help you for some reason. So yeah, that was kind of the experience. And I think because I had to do I didn't have to do, because I did so much for my sister, finding her help, getting her checked into a facility, I knew what to do. And so I got my insurance card, called the mental health hotline. I was like, hey, I need somebody, give me people in my area, and did some research and made phone calls. And before I could talk myself out of it, I had something scheduled. So that was helpful.
Wow. Okay. I have a handful of tangents. I was furiously making notes. So the first thing I can tell immediately that you have done a ton of personal development work. The fact that you were able to jump in and sort of cut this thing down right while it was still just in the thought pattern, right? When you said you were sitting there thinking about it and you knew it would consume you, kind of the idea that thoughts will dictate our actions, and you intervened before it moved to action phase. I mean, I have to commend you. That's brilliant self-awareness to do that.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
The other thing that jumped out, and you and I were chatting about it in our pre-recording, is is just how casual you are talking about going to therapy. And I love that. And we kind of shared that in our pre-recording. I have a standing appointment that's like every 2 to 3 weeks, and I see a counselor. So this whole idea of, normalizing it honestly is no different than going to the gym and training your body. You need to train, your mind, your emotions, your mental health.
I totally agree. I mean, even last week, this isn't a plug, but I just signed up with BetterHelp because everyone's going to telehealth right now anyway. So I figured, well, I might as well have a service where I can send my therapist text messages and it doesn't invade her private time. But just last week, she had me do this exercise, evaluating how well I'm taking care of myself. And she understands that I have an analytical brain. I love assessments and things, that works for me. So she gave me this thing and I filled it out, and then she went through it with me. And I learned so much about, just something as simple as I feel very uncomfortable looking at myself in the mirror and saying, I am proud of you. I tried to do it today. I couldn't even do it. I could not even look at myself and say, I am proud of you. What is that? So I think therapy isn't just for people that are struggling. It absolutely is for people that are struggling, but a therapist is someone who can really, really help you hone in on some of these blind spots that we have. And it's hard work. They make you look at the ugly things that we don't want to look at. But also in my experience, my therapists I've had multiple, have really been able to hone in on things that I say and things that I do, and ask pointed questions about my family, because I got some stuff in my family and I will never even bring them up, and they'll be like, ask me this question. I'm like, how did you know that? They're like wizards. So no, I love therapy. I think if you just want to have a better quality of life in general, having a therapist, having someone else to talk to is critical. And it also takes the pressure off of your friends and your loved ones, because as much as we love to share with our friends and family and spouses, it is not their job to fix us. That is my job. And we should all be able to confide in people, but having a third party who is completely detached from you on an emotional level, and they are looking at you from the lens of a professional, it allows you to freely talk about anything you want to talk about. And I just love that.
Yeah. And it's not like, to your point on, sharing with your spouse and your friends, it's not even fair to them. I think of our poor spouses that aren't in the veterinary profession. They don't get it. They don't know. And we come home and we dump all this on them. They didn't ask for that, and it's completely unfair.
Yeah.
So on the therapy, I'm going to spend a little more time here because I think it's really important. And you said it is hard work, which it is. And I would argue to people listening, it's choose your hard, right? You can either do the hard work in therapy or do the hard work of continuing to suffer. So what would you say, maybe to someone that, in their gut, they know they should reach out for help from someone, from a professional, but they're a bit fearful of that, which is totally normal. I think most people are fearful of that first step. So any thoughts to help them, pick up the phone or schedule that appointment?
I'm always in favor of just ripping it off like a Band-Aid, like do it before you can even think twice about it. I also, this may not be a good thing, but this is also how I think about my investments. Like I invested in a business coach last week, and I was like, just take my credit card. But no, on a serious note, the first thing I would say to that person is, what are you afraid of? What are you afraid of? Ask yourself, what is so scary about talking to someone, and then answering those questions honestly. Because, and then writing a counter to every argument that you have. Most of the time, a lot of our fears are not really founded in anything real. And those things go away pretty quickly. I mean, I was fearful of getting on this call today because I was so nervous, but as soon as we hit play, it just flows. And I think that has been my experience with therapy too. And yeah, it is scary, but I just, wouldn't you love to move through your life with a little bit more ease and to have someone that you can offload a little bit to, because these burdens are heavy, and having someone on your team who really has no reason not to help you, they have every reason to help you, is a huge relief. And what you said, honestly, is the discomfort of staying the same eventually outweighs the discomfort of change. And unfortunately, the discomfort of staying the same, people have accustomed themselves to drowning with substances, binge eating, watching television, all of these coping mechanisms. But you can't do that forever.
Yeah.
I mean, you could, but it's not going to end well.
And especially when it keeps ratcheting up slowly over time, you maybe don't notice the incremental changes, and then you look up and you're a long ways away from where you started, with that change that creeps in.
Yeah. And another thing is that every minute, every day is a new day, but even the next minute is a new chance to start. I spent most of my morning eating my feelings and laying in my pajamas. But I know that when we get off this call, instead of putting my pajamas back on and just watching Netflix, because for some reason I'm indulging in overwhelm today, I am instead going to take my dogs for a walk and get out in the sunshine. And, those small decisions, this is just like therapy too. Like, the more you commit to just starting over and recommitting and recommitting and recommitting. I mean, literally, that's what every day is for me, is just recommitting to myself, recommitting to growth, and forgiving myself for the times that I fail. And that is a daily practice. And to be honest with you, it's never going to go away. So just because you start seeing a therapist doesn't mean that poof, your problems go away and that you're not going to have to try. You're always going to have to try. And I think the sooner you accept that, the better you'll be. And knowing that you're not alone, that every single human on the face of this earth struggles with the same things. We think that we are so unique, and we are special, but honestly, our problems are not that unique. We all struggle with the same damn stuff, and we're not alone. And that's why I advocate so much for vulnerability and sharing that I go to therapy, and that I was using substances, and that I was on antidepressants, and that I had a panic attack and had to leave work. That helps others because it makes them realize they're not alone, and you're not a freak. You are not unworthy. You are not unloved. You are an amazing person. You are an incredible person, and you deserve to pick up the phone or to hop on that app and talk to somebody. You are your greatest investment.
Wow. That's amazing. That's truly amazing. Oh man. I don't even know where to go with that. I guess I would say
there's a mic that's just been dropped.
That is a mic drop.
That's my soapbox. You hit a soapbox topic. So
that's perfect. That's what we told you we were gonna try do, is just, let you go on the soapbox, because I mean that's brilliant. I can attest to the fact that you were in your pajamas, because I did catch your Instagram live today or this morning, and it was so funny because you're like, don't judge me, I'm still in my pajamas. I was still in my pajamas when I was watching it, so I was really laughing at that.
Okay.
So with that, let's sort of swing over to social media, because you said a lot of stuff in there. We all have stuff that we're going through, and sometimes what keeps us bottled up is because we think we're the only ones, right? And social media can be kind of people's highlight reels, right? Like only post the best of the best. And I have to ask you a question about, and this is how we connected, is you had a series of posts around you recently leaving your latest position. And on your first post, what jumped out at me, your post was, I think it was titled, "I Quit." And you said, "I haven't posted in a while. I haven't been on here since November." And that was the thing that jumped out at me the most, was because, and I've done this a lot too, where, you know, if we're going through something, we feel like we need to hide, and we shouldn't put that out there. And then you put out your posts in February. I think it was February 12th. And so I'm dying to know kind of the thought process that went through that, what it was like when you put that out there, and then how you felt following the feedback. Because I went through all the comments and saw it, and it was just like an outpouring of everyone being like, wow, this is me. Like you said all the things that so many people are thinking.
Yeah. Well, the reason why, so I left my job. My last day was December 29th. I had put my notice in 3 months prior. That was really important to me, is to leave professionally and on a good note. So even though I was like, I made sure to do my full 90 days. And my ex-boss and I we're great friends, and we're still going to do a little work together. But to be honest, the reason why I was silent about it was, one, I was a little nervous. I didn't really know how to talk about it without like shitting on the practice I was leaving. I wasn't quite in the place yet where I knew what to say. And I think I was still trying to find the positive from last fall up until January, February. I was really, because I do think it's important to talk about your stories, but there is this thing called emotional dumping that's really not productive. And I have seen some people that kind of just dump. And it is good because it kind of sees that, it does what you say, like it shows other people that you're experiencing the same thing, but it's not productive. And I want my mission is to be productive with my pain. And I think that's possible via storytelling. So that's part one, is I didn't quite know how to talk about it and frame it in a way that was productive for myself. The second reason is that, honestly, I just wanted to turn my brain off for 6 weeks. So when I stepped out of the office that last day, I took a month and a half off. I did 2 weeks of a road trip by myself with my dog. And then the rest of the time, I just kind of flailed about, not knowing what to do with myself. And my fiance is like, "Are you going to work again?" And I'm like, chill out. But yeah. And then I think I was also really triggered by social media. So, and that still happens. Like I'll get in these ruts where I'm scrolling too much and I'm seeing what all the other wonderful people are doing with their accounts. And I'm thinking to myself, dang, like, my shit sucks. And so I just wanted to give myself some space and time to process and get clear on what I was feeling and how I wanted to tell that story before I put it out. So, but I was overwhelmed with the response. If anything tells you that you are speaking from the heart, because I felt so seen, and I think a lot of other people did too. And that was awesome. That's the whole point.
Absolutely. You can tell. Yeah. As soon as I saw those posts and saw all the outpouring, I was like, this is pure like vulnerability, and people really resonate with that. The part about taking time away, I love that. And especially you went on a trip. I know a lot of people, if you just go by yourself with your dog and you have a fiance and you leave them behind, they'll be like, you're being selfish or whatever. And it's like, I 100% argue the opposite, is that each individual needs some time and space for themselves. For me, I also being in nature really amplifies that, but everyone has their own thing. But I think that's amazing.
Yeah,
Okay.
thankfully my fiance is very understanding that I can have extremely introverted periods of time. And he's an extreme extrovert, like way over there. So I am very, very grateful that when I came to him and I said, "Hey babe, I want to do this for myself," he was like, "Okay." And I was like, "Wait a minute. Are you worried at all?" He's like, "Should I be?" And I was like, "No." He's like, "Okay."
Yeah, that's amazing. Okay,
Yeah,
well, let's kind of keep charging forward then. So out of all of this, out of your time of reflection, I know you're headed in kind of a new direction. You have your Resilience Rising kind of brand. Tell us a little bit about that and kind of where you're headed.
Yeah, so I created that back in 2018, and the intent was to do more of a coaching model. But as the years have gone by, I have tried to listen a little bit more about what lights me up. And the things that light me up is connecting with others. I love connecting with others. I love storytelling, and I love to hear others' stories. I love students. I did a couple of talks last year, one in person prior to the pandemic and one virtually at Auburn. And I just loved it. I loved it. And I had so much fun with them and they with me. And so right now I am really just trying to hone in on 2 or 3 things that I want to focus my energy on. One of them is building an online presence. I do think that everyone should have access to me in that way. And there's plenty of things I can share there. And just continuing to network with people with like-minded people and building that brand and that momentum and that presence online. The second thing I'm working on is I really want to do a lot more public speaking. So I know right now we live in a world where that's going to be virtual, and that's totally fine. So that'll be really fun to hone that craft and do a lot more speaking. And my big dreams are to do some talks at conferences and just sharing about what you can learn and the importance of developing yourself. I think that has been the greatest contributor to my growth, is the time and the money that I have invested in my own development, and sharing that mindset with others, because it's very easy to get into a victim mindset. Yes, this profession is difficult. But there are a lot of things that you can do with your own mind that can make your quality of life much better. So teaching people that. And then third, I would say I really want to be an advocate for change. And there are some cultural and structural things that need to change in our profession in order to facilitate a healthy constituency. Like you can't have students going out of school not having mentorship or access to mentorship. You can't have students going into internships working more hours than a clinician does and getting treated like a piece of crap, and expected to be, working 6 days a week and on call all weekend and not sleeping. And there's just some stuff that needs to change. And then with practicing veterinarians, how can we advocate that we get paid better? How can we advocate that it's okay to work 30 hours a week or 60 hours a week? If you want to work 60 hours a week, great. If you want to work 80, great. But if you don't want to do that, I think there are ways that we can change how we can empower privately owned hospitals to create environments that are conducive to good patient care and good mental health. And there's just a lot that I want to see in our lifetime, and I want to be on the forefront of that. And if that looks like having conversations and being on podcasts or making a podcast or having a book club or speaking or coaching, I mean, whatever I got to do, that's what I'm going to do. But for now, it looks like branding and speaking, and yeah, I'm still figuring it out, I guess, is the answer.
Yeah, I like the attitude though. Whatever I got to do, that's what I'm going to do. So, you have the vision and the goal is very clear, and you'll figure out how you're going to do that. In our pre-recording, we talked a lot about it, and it's popped up through the conversation, the power of taking personal responsibility.
Yes.
Right. And I'm curious, like, how have you developed that? Because I see it's very strong, in you to take charge. I think you had said, like, taking care of yourself. That is my job, right? No one else is going to come ring your doorbell and be like, hey, I'm here to fix all your problems for you.
Yeah. I mean, I have to start by saying I'm not perfect at that all the time. There are days when I just kind of have to give myself a pass and allow myself to just lay on the couch all day. But I think that, why am I so good at that? I think it's because I approach myself with a curiosity. That's not a word. With curiosity. I approach myself with curiosity. I ask questions. I keep an open mind. I allow others to share things with me. And instead of judging them for it, I just think, that's different. Tell me more about that. Or, if, like, I'll tell you what, I joined a random women's group, like a secular group for ambitious women in Atlanta, several years ago, and didn't know anyone. It was very nerve-wracking as an introvert, but I just kind of shoved myself into the situation and met all these amazing women, and they were talking about all kinds of stuff, like Tim Ferriss, and oh, here's this podcast, and oh, what are these crystals, and oh, what is this wheel of self-care, and like they were just talking about all this stuff that was so foreign to me. And instead of running away from it, I just got curious. I started asking questions. I allowed myself to be open-minded. And I think that's probably the biggest reason why I am the way that I am, because I'm just always absorbing information, and I take what's useful and leave the rest. And over time, that's kind of allowed me to grow. And also, I don't know if you've ever heard that Will Smith quote where he talks about running and reading.
No,
I don't think I have. No.
Okay, so I'll send you guys this link, but there's like a very small YouTube video snippet of him talking about running and reading are two of the most important things that you can do in your life. Running teaches you how to ignore and work through the voice that tells you to stop. Because how many of us have gone for a run and said, this sucks, I can't breathe. And if you just keep pushing past all of those thoughts, your body can go so much further. So you teach your brain how to work through difficult moments, and how to work through difficult thoughts. And then the second part of that is reading. Everything that you've ever experienced in your life, somebody has also experienced and probably has already written a book about it. So running and reading.
Nice. It's that simple. It's that simple.
Yeah.
I like it.
Okay,
Yeah.
my last question for you, and it's kind of a hard one on this topic, and you and I were talking about this. Why don't more people invest in their personal development? And this one has me stumped too, because I'm fully on board with where you're at. I probably spend too much on personal development. And when you and I were swapping book lists and podcasts, I have a whole page written down. So any thoughts, what is keeping people, and honestly, specifically veterinarians, because I see vets being kind of notoriously bad at, as you said, grabbing their credit card and just swiping it if it's something that will help them.
I think there's a lot of factors. I've kind of thought a little bit about it since you and I talked. I think one is that we just severely undervalue ourselves. I just don't think anyone has shown us that there is value in investing in ourselves. And as a profession, we are bludgeoned over and over again that the priority is work. and the priority is our patients and our clients, and we will self-sacrifice over and over and over again, and put everyone else first. And I don't know that anyone necessarily, no, yes, they do. People do call you selfish for putting yourself first. Even clients will be the first to, bitch at you if you don't call them back at 9 o'clock at night. And there's this negative reinforcement of that behavior. So I think that's number one, is that we think that there is inherently something wrong with putting ourselves first and investing in ourselves. The second thing is, if it requires time, or you actually going somewhere or taking time away from work, time seems to be a commodity that's very limited for a veterinary professional, because we work so much. So if we have to invest time in ourselves, there has to be some sort of return on that investment. And I just don't think that whoever we have done a good job of illustrating that return on the investment. And maybe that's where part of our mission comes from, is like, we're trying to show people that there is a benefit to investing time and money in yourself. And then also the whole CE thing, like, if you want to take 3-day weekend to invest in yourself and go to a self-development conference, you wonder, am I going to have time and money to do that with my CE? Because I have to get that done. So I think there's a bunch of factors. I think there's cultural things, time restrictions, not to mention people may not have as much disposable income. But I mean, I don't make any more than any other veterinarian. And somehow I'm still doing this. So I think it has to do with communicating value.
Yeah.
And we have to figure out how to do that.
Yeah, those are great thoughts. And I totally agree. As I'm listening to that, the time one is a paradox for me when I think about it, because I agree, everyone's busy, but the catch is a lot of these tools that you learn will actually free up more of your time, if you put them into action and implement them. So it is an investment up front for sure, but it pays off, or it has for me tremendously. So it's a conversation. Yeah. I hope, we as in like everyone that's kind of on this, can push forward and get more veterinarians, investing in themselves for sure.
Yeah. I mean, my business coach, what she said to me last week, right before I gave her my credit card, I was like, Taylor, how do you rationalize, or how do you argue with all these thoughts that are coming in my head? Like, oh, this could go towards my wedding, and oh, this could go towards, buying a new car. This could go towards the renovations on my home. And she just said, Jacqui, you are the only person that you will ever have for the rest of your life. You might go on a trip, you might buy a new car, but those things are transient. Investing in yourself and investing in your brain is only going to pay you back in dividends. These things that you learn now are going to help you for the rest of your life, not just for the next 5 years while your car is working. You know what I mean? So, and oftentimes the investments that you make end up coming back to you, maybe in a different form. But from a business standpoint, just like numbers game, like if you invest $10,000 in a business coach, and they show you the skills on how to launch a particular product, you might be able to launch that product for 30 grand in that month that you invest in that coach, and bam, you've already paid for that coach for the year. So I think there's a way to stimulate that with the brain, and making your quality of life better, because isn't that kind of the point? Yeah. To have a good quality of life?
Yeah. And this is why I wanted to ask you the question right now, because you kind of nailed it. Every time I've heard an answer, it comes before a sales pitch, right? Like, sometimes presenters will build it up and be like, this is why you should invest in yourself. By the way, now I'm going to sell. And it's like, we're not setting that up to sell anyone anything. It's, we believe in it so much. So.
Yes.
Okay, Jacqui. Wow. This has been a great conversation. Looks like I went over on time again, as I'm prone to doing. So we're going to move into our impact round here. So a series of questions. And hopefully some of them catch you off guard because you said you don't know what's coming. You don't know which questions are coming. So question number 1, are you a cat or a dog person?
Dog.
Dog.
For sure. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Question 2, you answered earlier, but I'll still ask it, true or false. I knew I wanted to be a veterinarian since I was a kid.
True.
Yeah.
I feel so lame saying that.
How would your friends describe what you do for a living?
I save puppies and kittens.
Yeah, you do. Yeah, you do.
Yeah, they would probably just say that my non-vet friends, they would just say that I help animals and that I'm a doggy doctor. It's really cute, actually, how they describe it. They love and value what I do.
Yeah. What is your favorite hobby?
Ooh, video games. Even though I haven't done it in so long, I miss that so much. I love video games.
What's your favorite video game?
Oh man, Fallout just came in my head. Fallout 3 probably is the best. I grew up playing Final Fantasy, but as an adult, I really like post-apocalyptic RPGs. So, and then what's another good one? The Last of Us. That was a really good one.
I'm gonna have to look these up now.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, they're good.
Nice. What in this world are you most grateful for?
Human connection. Yeah, I would just say the most beautiful and rewarding things that I experience on a regular basis, which is funny to say as a veterinarian. You think I'd say like, oh, animals. But honestly, the connections I have had with other individuals have been so special to me. Yeah, I'll just leave it at that.
Nice. Okay, Jacqui, we're wrapping up here. Thank you so much for your time and for the mic drops. I mean, there was a few of them in this episode. I was excited to chat with you, and I mean, it lived up to it. Anything to add in here, Jonathan?
No, I was thinking about it as we're closing here, the breadth of the conversation as well, and how deep you were willing to go. Very much appreciate that. I think our listeners are going to learn a lot. And I'm excited for your next stages within your career.
Thank you, Jonathan. That means a lot.
Yeah. So if anyone wants to reach out or if they want to follow along, where can they find you?
So presently I'm most active on Instagram, and my Instagram handle is Resilience Rising Vet. Mike's going to put that in the show notes in case, spelling is an issue, but Resilience Rising Vet. And then my website, which is not completed, but it's partial. So be gentle with me, www.resiliencerisingvet.com.
Excellent. And yes, we will get those in the show notes for anyone listening. So as always, Jacqui, the final word goes to you. What message do you want to leave for the veterinary community?
I think the message I want to leave for people today is don't be afraid to ask for help, and don't be afraid to invest in yourself and in others. As you probably saw with my Instagram live today, sometimes when you reach out to others thinking that you might help them, you might be surprised that they actually help you. And just don't be afraid to rely on other people. You're not alone, and we are on this planet to help each other. Truly, that's what we're here to do, is to love one another. And it's pretty difficult if you try to do that alone. So don't be afraid. And if you need to, if you feel like you want to reach out to me, that is perfectly fine. I'm happy to get a message from you, but if it's not me, reach out to someone else that's in your inner circle. They would much rather you do that than go it alone.
Thank you for listening to the Veterinary Project Podcast. As a recap, on behalf of our hosts, the Veterinary Project Podcast will be releasing new episodes weekly. So be sure to tune in as we bring you more conversations aimed at helping you enjoy a life well lived. If you enjoyed what you heard on the show and you want to stay in the know, please like, love, and or subscribe to the podcast on the listening platform of your choosing, as we're available on all the usual suspects. If you know of others that may benefit from these conversations, we'd love it if you please share the show with them, as this will help us grow our community to reach more and more veterinary professionals. Speaking of which, if you are a veterinary professional and would like to get connected with more like-minded individuals who are joining us on this journey, please send an email to the veterinaryprojectpodcast@gmail.com, and we'll invite you to be a part of our private Facebook group. General feedback, requests for information, or perhaps requests to be a guest on the show can also be sent to the Veterinary Project Podcast @gmail.com. Dr. Michael Bugg and Dr. Jonathan Light, thank you for listening to the show, and we'll catch you again next week for another episode of the Veterinary Project Podcast. Bye for now.